Hi again, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for being here today. So there are probably two things I love when it comes to hobbies and entertainment, most of all in the world, and that's comic books and music. And depending on the day, I'm not sure what order that they come in. And Martin, please go ahead and move us forward a slide. Comics and punk rock in particular are, in my opinion, among the most pure forms of art that there are. And the reasons for this are manifold, and I could probably hold you here for the rest of the hour just talking about that aspect of it. But what it comes down to me is that simplicity and purity. Comic books and punk rock are ultimately accessible. They're available. You can find them anywhere. It's not intended that you have to study, put in time, make sure that you understand some sort of premises, that you know what sonata form means, to be able to access these forms of art. You simply can engage with them on some level and go. And they're everywhere. You can find them and go. And they both embody very much a do-it-yourself mentality. Punk rock and comic books both feature people that simply picked up guitars or picked up pen and paper and went forth and achieved, found success, created things that contributed to the art forms in a way that are classics, that are standards. And this means a lot to me. They both are simple, but at the same time, they allow for depth, complexity, and commentary of all types. Social commentary, historical commentary, you name it. This duality exists in both art forms and is inseparable to the truth that is at the core of both. You can read a Superman story as a simple parable of good versus evil. Or you can memorize the different effects the different types of kryptonite have based on color and the different universes. Who would do that? You can listen to a song by Bad Brains from the 70s or 80s and just like, okay, that's a 2.5 minute, fast-paced rock song. Or you can start to think about things like what the lyrics entail, or you can perhaps think about, with a Bad Brains song, why is that audio quality the way it is? And then you can look into it. Well, in this case, with a Bad Brains song, some of those songs are recorded over the phone because the singer was in prison. Whoa, interesting, right? And you can look into it a little bit deeper and find out things about history and what's going on. Why was this person in prison? And go from there. And suddenly there's a little bit of depth into it. This is a song that is about rebellion by a person doing a collect phone call from a state penitentiary. Well, recently, Martin, please, a new Superman movie released. And it embodies some of these aspects down to the name itself, because it's the second film to simply be titled Superman. And that's what you have before you, both the movie posters of the first one from 1978 and the newer one. So do we call this Superman, the one on the right? Do we call it Superman 2025? Do we call it the David Cornsweet Superman, the DC Universe Superman? Or do you just call it Superman and not worry about it? Any answer is completely okay. You can just simply engage with it. It's Superman movie. Hello, child. This is Superman. This is a Superman movie. Or you can engage with it on the deeper level and go into the historical aspects and fight about what to call it. It's fine. This film with James Gunn at the helm, the more recent film with James Gunn directing, makes use of the punk rock idea and uses punk rock rather extensively in the soundtrack. And it is stunningly optimistic and effectively so, to the point that various movements have popped up or gained traction around this movie and around Superman. If you look into it, you'll find various manifestations of what is often called hope core. Reddit declared, Hope Corps has won in a pretty prominent thread with lots of engagement. And you'll see various stories from news outlets with titles like What We Talk About When We Talk About Hope. And it's about this new Superman movie. And Hope and Heroism, Superman 2025. In particular, near the middle part of the movie, there is a scene where Lois Lane and Superman / Clark Kent are having a conversation about whether or not Clark Kent has any credibility on the punk rock scene. And Clark says, I'm punk rock. And Lois says, my point is I question everything and everyone. She, of course, is a journalist. You trust everyone and think everyone you ever meet is like beautiful. And Superman says, maybe that is the real punk rock. Maybe thinking everything is intrinsically beautiful. Maybe being hopeful. Maybe everyone you ever meet has some value to them is the real punk rock. And this may seem contradictory, as punk rock is known to be slightly hard edge, perhaps abrasive, boisterous, a little crude. If you listen to a Black Flag song, that's not an unreasonable position to hold. However, my main message to you today is that there is no contradiction there, as hope is rebellious. More than that, true hope is hard-won. It is purposefully chosen. As one of our readings said, it is not a position of naivety. It is not naiveness to be hopeful at your core and to look at someone and to choose intrinsically to see beauty. As one of my heroes, a Black Flag singer, by the way, Henry Rollins, put it. Oh, sorry. There's a kindness there that was related to the meme from one of the Reddit pages. Let's go forth again, please. And one more. As Henry Rollins put it, my optimism wears heavy boots and is loud. And some of you who've hung out with me a little bit are going, isn't Leah's son named Henry? Huh. His middle name is Clark. The position of hopefulness is punk rock precisely because it must be chosen, it must be applied, it must be demanded of yourself. It is not easy to remain of the disposition when the world is falling down around you that all will work out for the best or otherwise. It is not easy to think that the odds will be overcome in real life. That's what makes it punk. It must be loud. It must be heavy. It must be made of stern stuff if it's going to endure. Punk rock and comic books have had to stand against many things that they've had to hold up against too when adopting this hopeful stance. By the way, punk rock and comic books both have had to go against, and you will endure this if you try to be hopeful in life and on the internet. You'll have to go against accusations of hypocrisy, of being fake, or, and I think here punk rock's and comic book, of immaturity, just immaturity that it's at your core. It just can't be overturned no matter what you produce. Comic books are immature, of course. Punk has been harangued by being started by people who were themselves, or sometimes their girlfriends, were involved with art schools. So therefore, the whole thing must be insincere. It must have been a plant. It must have been some idea by these academic institutions, and the whole thing is just, it was just fake. It was just fake from the get-go. Does it really make any difference? And to a degree, by the way, those charges are true. If you look at some of the very first punk rockers, they were dating people that were in art school. So what? In my opinion. Does that make the product insincere? Does that make the things that have come after it untrue? Does that make their spirit fake? I'm not sure that it does. People who have endured pain and still laugh, people who have survived hardship and can still look for the good in others, people who have reason to fear and who try on bravery anyway. That's not immaturity or fakeness. That is something that is real at its core. G.K. Chesterton, when talking about things like fiction that's meant for children, by the way, said, "Fairy tales do not tell children that dragons exist. Children already know that dragons exist. Fairy tales tell children that dragons can be killed." Superman was created by two Jewish writers in 1938. Let's look at a few things that happened that year. The Night of Broken Glass, during which over 1,400 synagogues were burnt. The invalidation of Jewish passports. The banning of Jewish people from sports facilities, theaters, and universities, and a cultural movement in Germany called Aryanization. Jerry Siegel's father died of a heart attack during a store robbery. And this also directly inspired the idea of a strong man protector who could hop in and save the day. They both were quite young. They both were watching these things from Cleveland happening in Europe, and Jerry Siegel had endured the death of his father. I'm here going to go to perhaps slightly counterintuitive place and give you a paraphrase of a quote from Batman, but this is a quote from one of my favorite Superman authors, Grant Morrison, and something to this effect: "I walked through that door into a simpler time when everything was overlaid with thousands of layers of meaning. And the one in front of me, he could have been at various moments a tyrant or a king or a dragon. All those layers of myth. But I had a myth of my own. A myth where ultimate evil looked on humanity and we looked back and said, 'Gotcha.'" Those two young men who invented Superman looked at the beasts of the world unfolding before them and responded with a fiction simple and profound. And a lot of the best fiction, as you can tell, in my opinion, is both of those things: simple and at the same time profound. The world says submit. Punk rock says no. Comic book heroes and punk music operate off a similar core of simplicity that spirals outward without having to lose that basis at their core. Both operate in a way that gives us a perception of people versus evil, and also a perception of interacting with time that gives us the ability to relive those fights, to relive those rebellions. You know, if you think about it, all fiction operates that same way. Obviously, you can re-engage with the story anytime you want, but music and comic books have this element where you can rewind them in a very specific way. You can read Superman's life totally out of order. You can revisit any page you want at any time. You can kind of like 4D his life on the page. And with the song, again, you can revisit your favorite part of it over and over and over and over again. But in a way that I think we take for granted. A recording is obviously a recording, but it is a capturing of that moment in time. It's people expressing their feelings from a specific moment in history. That recording by Bad Brains I mentioned is forevermore a black man incarcerated singing about that experience over the phone from a prison. You can revisit that forevermore. And we connect with those moments of rebellion when we do so. We use that to incorporate into our own ideas of how to stand up against the things that we have to face. Let's go, please, to the last slide. And with that in mind, this is my favorite Superman panel. I'm going to focus here on specifically the middle panel and the one on your right. Here, and this is from All-Star Superman, also written by Grant Morrison. After the death of Superman's father, various supermen from the future visit him, and Superman Prime, who it's not revealed, but is actually our Superman, Clark Kent, visits from who knows when in the future and says, "This is an indestructible flower from New Krypton, for him, from all of us, in remembrance of all that we are and all that we will be." It's a characteristic of Grant Morrison that he likes to make his artists focus in on somebody's eye, on their face, to give you the impression that they're talking to you. And every time I revisit this panel, I remember where I was the first time I saw it. And in that way, I'm also kind of interacting with the past, and I think music has that quality as well. You know, the idea of Superman has, in some ways, become somewhat real. The world's not easy, and it's not likely to get any easier. And sometimes hope can be a lie that we make come true. It's not likely to get any easier, but the notion of hope, like a good punk rock song, will continue to ring out. And when you pick up that notion of hope, it does have some weight to it. But hey, guess what? Anyone can pick up the tune. May it be so.